So hello, everyone, and welcome to the Empowering Women podcast. We are now in 2025 with our first episode of, believe it or not, season number 7. So hopefully all of your holiday decorations are tucked nicely away somewhere, and you are rejuvenated and ready for what I know will be your best year yet. So here we go. Today's guest, she was my table mate at the 2024 Empowering Women Conference in October of last year. Stephanie, she's such great company. We had a wonderful time at the conference, and she's an inspiration for me, and you'll find out why today during our conversation. And so I just had to share her with all of you. By day, Stephanie is a project specialist for Enbridge. But in the rest of her quote unquote spare time, she has founded a nonprofit organization called This One's for the Gals that helps girls with career exploration and workforce development, particularly, which I love, in non-traditional industries. She is an absolute superwoman. So welcome, Stephanie, to the podcast. It's so good to see you.
Hi, Shannon. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's crazy. I can't believe I'm saying that again. But it'll feel like a month from now, it's December all over again. So there we go. The crazy wheel that is our life, right?
Yes, for sure.
So as I mentioned, I'm thrilled to share you with our listeners. I always kick things off by asking you to tell me more about your journey. So let's hear more about your story, Stephanie.
Oh my goodness, where to start, right? I am so thankful to be where I'm at right now. And it really is, and I will say this till my very last day because of empowering women.
Mm.
I mean, I have been part of this organization almost from the very beginning, and it has taught me so much about myself, about how important it is to show up for myself, to show up for other women, and now through my nonprofit to show up for girls, right? Our next generation. And I'll tell you, personally, I was really just a small town girl that had no clue what was out there for her.
Mm.
And I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I left home thinking that I knew everything and I was just going to figure life out. And life pretty much figured me out, and I wasn't prepared. Right. And so I went through, just a lot of different difficult situations. I went through a divorce, being a
Mm.
single mom, no post-secondary education, no training. And my life at 24 years old just didn't look the way I thought it would. I'm like,
Mm.
where's my, white picket fence and my happy home? And it was not like that. And I just wasn't prepared. And so I ended up going and learning a skill. I learned AutoCAD with a 6-week certificate. I walked into a job fair being held by Bechtel in Houston. I had no clue who they were, but they were having this big job fair. And my friend said all I had to do was go in and ask for an entry-level job. And I'm like, well, I can do that. That sounds simple enough. And I literally just walked in there with that AutoCAD certificate in one hand and a willingness to learn in the other, and just asked for an entry level job. And I went through a couple of interviews, and they offered me a job that changed my life.
Mm.
And it opened my eyes to so many different things I didn't know existed. I didn't know I was capable of doing. And it really was just, I'm telling you, it was a world I had no clue existed. And so much has changed since then, because that was almost 20 years ago, which is crazy to think about. Um, but, so much has changed. I've learned so much. And now that I know what I know, I got to go tell the girls, right? I've got to go
Yep.
tell that next generation how to get there, right? How to, because as I have climbed my ladder of success, I've left that ladder down, right? And now
Yep.
I want to bring as many girls, as many women with me as I can.
Yeah, and it's funny because somebody left that ladder down for you because you're like, really? Can I just walk in there and have the certificate in my left hand and just
Yeah.
ambition on the right hand and actually get a job? And they're like, sure, you can.
Yeah, why not? What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, I'm gonna extrapolate. I'm gonna go a little farther into this one. So Stephanie, I think you know this. I follow you on Instagram, and you post the most lovely post last week or so ago about the woman that I think either hired no, the woman you were replacing temporarily. I think you were replacing her. She was going to be out of the office, and you're
Yeah.
still friends with her, right?
Yes, Maguelita. Yes. So that job at Bechtel I got hired for was because she was going out on maternity leave.
Okay.
And so they needed somebody to come and fill in for her. And so that was my first entry level position, was taking over for her while she was going to be out. And yes, we're still friends to this day.
I love it because it shows the power of relationships. And I love how you're sort of telling us there's no telling where your journey may lead you, but then
Mhm.
also to embrace those people along the way. It's why I kind of wanted to put that little plug in there. I love that story.
Absolutely. It is. I'm a believer that your network is your net worth. Like mine has come in clutch for me so many times. And so I'm like, yes, grow your network. That's one of the things I teach girls. Like, because sometimes I'll hear like, oh, you have to know somebody to get in there. You have to know somebody. You have to know somebody. And I'm like, okay, it's not always about who you know, but who you meet, right? What are you doing to grow
Hmm.
your network, to get out there and network with people and make relationships? That's where, we really need to focus on building those soft skills in girls and helping them learn, hey, go meet people, go to these networking opportunities. That's very important.
Yeah, and I think I'm being a little biased here, but I think for our younger generation, because they can hide behind the screens, I'm a little older. I'm in my late 40s, so
Mhm.
I didn't
Yeah.
grow up in that environment of hiding behind the screen. And so I'm more even though I'm a little bit more of an introvert, I'm more apt to do it. And our girls today maybe may need a little bit more encouragement.
Absolutely, yes. Because, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I tried to get her to make a phone call the other day, and she was like, I got a call? What? Can't you just text them? Can't you just email them?
No.
No, pick up the
You
phone and call.
That's funny. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned empowering women on the outset. You and I initially met through the steering committee, although I don't think we crossed paths as much. We weren't on the committees, the subcommittees together. But I'm really curious what brought you into the organization, or did you find it, or did it find you?
Gosh, and I really just tried to think back because, I mean, we're talking about 2017, I want to say,
Okay.
2017,
You really
18,
were one of
right?
the founding members.
From the very beginning. And so I tried to think back, and honestly, I'm pretty honestly, I can't remember. But what I do remember is that there was like an open call for presenters. And I submitted a video and just wanted to share my story of how I got to where I was at. And I guess the not the title, but the subject was overcoming limiting beliefs.
Mm.
And they picked me to come and present in Chicago. And that was like my first ever like in front of people presentation.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it was insane. And I was like, whoo, I was so nervous. But like I said, that right there gave me the opportunity to share my story and then learn how important it was to share my story, right? Because after
Yeah.
that, I had so many women coming up to me saying, wow, that really resonated with me. Wow, and so right there, that was like the catalyst that took off. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is where I'm meant to be. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a long time and a long journey with empowering women in industry, but I would not be at all who I am without.
Agreed. Charlie finds us one way or another, right?
Yes, yes,
It's funny,
absolutely.
Stephanie. So my story is I met Christelle Zaman at the hydraulic pumps conference in
Mhm.
Canada. And I was there on behalf of my company at the time. And I did a presentation for the Women in Pumps Breakfast. And then I did a presentation for the pilot, which was basically they were trying to recruit younger folks into the pumps industry. And she came up to me and she said, Hey, have you heard of empowering women in industry? I was like, no. We're having this conference. Here's where you can submit abstracts. They're due in like a week. And I was like, okay, what the heck? And here we are, right? I
Same,
presented
right?
at the same conference you did in Chicago. I think that was the first one, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
And here
that's
we are all
awesome.
these
Here
years
we are
later.
talking to each other. That's the
Yeah.
power of community. There's another takeaway for the listeners, the power of community. I love that story. Well, we have to get into what I really wanted you here for, which is this one's for the gals. It's just an amazing. I've really been watching this take off. I'm just curious what inspired you to found the organization.
Oh, such a small idea. Such a small idea that literally took off. And I am just so humbled and so just honored that it is what it is. It's grown into what it has because I literally had this small idea back in October of 2021 to get a group of girls to a conference that's held in Galveston, Texas. So I live right outside of Corpus Christi, Texas, here in South Texas. And really, even what brought that idea up was our family moved here in January of 2020. My husband works for ExxonMobil
Mm.
for Gulf Coast Growth Ventures, and it was a new facility they built here in Gregory, Portland, Texas. And he came over, and I love sharing his story too, because he is such a great example of somebody that left high school, went straight into the workforce, learned a skilled trade, an industrial electrician by trade, learned
Mm.
it well, worked really hard, and has done some really great things coming from that skilled trade background.
Yeah.
And so he he was hired on by ExxonMobil as an electrical supervisor for this project. And when he went to hire technicians, he had a lot of trouble finding qualified technicians here in this area. And I
Mm.
just remember thinking, okay, Exxon did not build overnight. We knew for at least 5 years. They're coming, they're going to build this large facility, they're going to have hundreds of jobs. What are we doing to help our kids learn about these
Mm.
careers? Right. We had at that time our twin boys were sophomores. Our daughter was in elementary, and I hadn't heard of any sort of outreach programs, no awareness campaigns, nothing helping our kids learn about these jobs with these companies that come in, build these large facilities, have all these jobs. I'm like, that is their future, right? That's
Yeah.
their future. Those are their jobs. So that's really what kicked it off. I'm like, we hadn't been talking to boys, much less girls, about any of these career pathways. So I attended this conference in 2017, and I remember there being school buses outside, and they had bussed in local high school girls to attend the conference. And I'm like, that is such a great idea, helping girls at that age explore these careers.
Mm.
So I approached my manager at the company I was working for and just asked if we could sponsor our local high school. He thought it was a great idea. I went and talked to the high school, introduced myself, told them what the girls would learn, similar career pathways we have here that they would learn about over there. Their response was really great. They were like, we would love to collaborate. We'll provide bus transportation. We'll take our girls the night before, stay at the hotel because it is about a 4 hour drive for us. So it is, quite of a trek. And so that response was really positive from the school. Our kids go to another school right down the road, and I really wanted that same opportunity for the girls at our school. So I just kind of nudged my husband and I'm like, hey, who can I contact, there that might help with the sponsorship? And I just reached out and said, this is what our company's doing. Would you be interested? And that response was great. They were like, absolutely, yes. We love this initiative. And so then I kept going. I was like, there's another school down the road, there's another industry partner down the road. And initially I thought I could get 10 or 12 girls with a chaperone, load them in our company van, and drive them to Galveston for the day. That was literally the thought.
Right.
But by the time I was done, I got over 200 girls to
Oh
that
my
conference.
goodness. You went from you literally what, 10 times at least, maybe 20 times what you
Exactly.
expected.
And it was amazing. And it was, I kind of knew I was on to a little bit bigger conversation, right? Than just a field trip. But still, I really just wanted to get girls to this conference. I had no clue about starting a nonprofit, nothing like that. I just wanted this opportunity for these girls. And again, a lot of the schools went the night before, stayed at it's called Moody Gardens Convention Center, took their girls out, had a nice dinner, just an overall really great experience for these girls. So the evening before, we're in the lobby, and one of the counselors comes up to me and she's thanking me for getting the initiative started. And then Shannon, she said something to me I am never going to forget.
Mm.
She said, Stephanie, you may not realize this, but the majority of our girls have probably never stayed in a hotel before.
Oh wow.
They've probably never been out of their hometown. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
I
is
like,
that, I guess it's shocking for me, but I'm trying to put myself back in like a, 16,
mhm.
17-year-old body.
Yeah. And then the communities, right? Like small rural communities, like in this area, and I didn't think about that. But that is the dynamic. We see a lot of generational poverty, a lot of kids
Mm.
seeing their parents get by, making ends meet, and then thinking that's life. And that's how my life is going to be. And I'm like, that is not life. It does not have to be that
Mm.
way. Right? We can break that. We can change that cycle. They
But
just
be
need
what
the
you see, right?
information.
And what
Yeah.
they see is that, right? So
Oh,
they can't imagine anything else. That or being like a
100%.
YouTube star because that's what they see on their phone, right?
100%. Yeah. And so I really like to say this one's for the gals was built on a foundation of girls can't be what they can't see. Right. And so if we're not giving them opportunities to meet women that from similar backgrounds, right? Because our biggest thing is from skilled trades to STEM, whatever that looks like. Maybe, you need to go to work right away. Okay, let's learn a skill or a trade. Or maybe
Right.
you're on a 2-year path or a 4-year path. Maybe you want to get an MBA. Hey, whatever that looks like for you, we want to help you explore careers within our industries, right? We focus on construction, energy, manufacturing, and we recently added maritime because being right here in Corpus Christi, Texas, they're the third largest port in the world for crude export. So we've got to have maritime, explore maritime
Yeah.
careers.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so I'm like, from skilled trades to STEM, again, whatever after high school looks like for you, we want to help you find your place in the workforce.
That is a great story. They like you started with this tiny, tiny little, I'm gonna
Yeah.
call it limited idea, right? I just want to sponsor this one group of girls to one conference. And now look what it's grown into. So I'm curious if you're playing back the 2024 highlight reel in your head, what are some moments that really grab you? Small ones or big ones?
So probably the biggest one was, oh gosh, there's so many. Okay, let me start with this one. Um, when I was getting that first group of girls together, right? I knew if I got one school, there was another one right down the road. If I got that one, there was another one. Like, oh my gosh, this need is so great. And I want everybody to go. And I want to be able to reach everyone. And I got a little overwhelmed and a little sad because I'm like, man, I want this opportunity for everybody, right? But I knew that, I could only take so many. One of my mentors, she's like, Stephanie, start where you're at and it will grow. And that's the best advice I could have gotten because it's no longer like how many can I reach personally, but for other people to see what we're doing and say, come help us do that for the girls in our community. Right. And that's what's
Mm.
happening. And so this past year, we've been working here in the coastal bend of Texas for the last couple of years and then branching down to the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. And we went and
Okay.
hosted an expo down there because what I really wanted to do was bring an expo to our area, like a big women in industry showcase, which we've been doing, and it was super successful, but then copy and pasting it in different areas, right? And so we did our first one down in the Rio Grande Valley for the girls in that community, and that was amazing. And again, it was really our industry partners just coming out and saying, yes, we want to support this initiative and help the girls in our community know that we have a place for them in our workforce.
What does the expo look like? What generally happens?
Okay, so it's high school girls, right? And so we leave it up to the high schools that we work with to decide who they feel would benefit the most from, this opportunity. So we work directly with them. And then the setup is we have a career expo, which is where all of our industry partners are as exhibitors. And then we have a education and resource expo. And
Mm.
that's all of our training centers, all of our universities, our colleges, 2 years, 4 years. We also incorporated resources, any sort of resource for women. They may not need it now, but if they find themselves in situations later in life, we
Mm.
want them to know that there's support and help. So we had an organization here in the Coastal Bend called the Purple Door that helps women coming out of domestic violence situations.
Mm.
We had Esperanza de Tejas that helps women with diapers and formula. Again, just
Okay.
any sort of resource to help them prepare for life in general, right? And then last but not, very not least is women in industry panels, right? We want them to hear from women from all kinds of different backgrounds. And
Yep.
so they're sharing their stories. They're up there, they're sharing how they got to where they're at and helping inspire the girls that are in those seats to just reach for the stars.
That's amazing. Okay, so the expo, it sounds like you did two. Is that right? In one year?
Yes.
Oh gosh,
Yes.
that's a lot. That is a lot. Any other like smaller highlights? Any like small groups or like one-on-ones that really stick out to you?
Yeah. So then I do like the expos that we put on, but then I also get invited to be, a panelist myself, right? To share my own
Right.
story. And I was invited to be on a panel for Universal Technical Institute in Austin. And it was a Women in STEM event for their local high school girls. And I did that panel last year, December of last year. No, when was that? Oh no. Okay. Can we go back to 2023? Because this is a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. We can go
Okay.
back to 23. It's
Okay,
close
this
enough.
was December of 23 because this is important. This is very important. So I was on this panel and it was me and about five other women and just again, just sharing our stories. And at the end, a girl comes up to me, one of the high school girls, and she said, I had a question because we did some Q&A, but she didn't want to stand up. And she said, I didn't really feel like anybody else would have this same question. I was like, oh, what is it? And she said, what kind of advice would you give to a girl that wants to go off and do something? Maybe go, get a 2 year or training certificate or something, but she's looked at as the caretaker for her younger brother and sister and doesn't want to leave them behind.
Wow, that is a tough question.
I wasn't ready. I was not ready
I'm
for
not
that
ready
question.
either. My brain is
I
y'all watching the
know.
video, you can't see my head spinning going, now what would I say?
And I just kind of looked at her and so the buses were loading and she kind of had to rush off. And so I said, look, I don't have that answer right now, but I would love to get your contact info and, help you figure this out. And so I got her cell number. We connected on social media and I found that, she has it a little bit difficult at home. Right. And, I kept in contact with her. I still get girls to that Galveston conference. We still do that trip over there. We still get them those opportunities, any opportunities we can get to kind of, get out and away and see different things. And I had some extra funding. And so when I thought of a school of who I could invite, I thought of her. And so I reached out to her school and I said, hey, I have some extra funding if y'all could make this trip. And they did. And I said, if she could come, I'd really love if she could be able to be a part of it. And so they were able to come and it was an awesome, amazing opportunity. And so in that room of about 300 people, she didn't want to stand up, right, to ask that question. But in Galveston this past year, in March of 24, she stood up in a room of 1,500 people
Oh my
and
goodness.
asked the keynote speaker that question because the keynote speaker had a slide and it said strong mothers equal strong daughters. And she just asked her, what advice would you give for someone who might not have that example? And I was so proud of her for standing up because I know more than her need that answer. I do,
Yep.
And so the keynote gave a great answer. Now I have it in my pocket because if that comes up again, but she said, surround yourself, right? Seek out mentors and surround yourself by women. There are women out there that want to help you succeed and want to help you, get through this part of your life. And I'm like, that's the best advice, right?
Mm,
And so to me, I've learned over this last year how important it is for me to be visible, right? Just to be visible to girls and to
mm,
show up and be present. That's very important. And I encourage, other women as well. Like other girls need to see you. Other girls need to connect with you and they need your help and support to figure that part out.
mm. Which you made me think about with the mentorship. It's really community too, but in that instance, it might be a community that's a little bit more seasoned than like maybe your girlfriends or folks would be.
Right. Yeah. And so I've learned it and I keep learning. Like I feel like this is going into our fourth year and I feel like, I've got it all figured out and I know all the needs and everything. And then I just keep learning and growing. And it's exciting. It's definitely a great space to be in.
Well, speaking of learning and growing, what do you think is coming forward in 2025 for this one's for the gals?
Oh my goodness. So we are actually going to branch to another area, Central Texas, in 2025. At the end of this year, we'll be coming to Central Texas for a Women in Industry Expo. And again, it's really just one of those things of others seeing what we're doing and saying, we need that here. Please come bring it here. And we're already got that in the works and
Oh,
really
wow.
excited again to just, again, just taking what we've built here and just planting it in different communities.
This wasn't on my standard list of questions, but my guess is you've got one in your head. Do you have any success stories you can share, obviously without breaching confidentiality? I'd love to hear the impact that I know you're having.
Yes, so it's really exciting because now we do have those success stories. I have like alumni panels I can do now because
Oh, that's
girls
fantastic.
girls have gone out and gotten like a 2 year, or maybe they went out and got a certification and now they're out in the workforce. But yes, our very first success story was a girl that went to that very first conference in Galveston. And she had an opportunity to talk to a group of female instrument technicians. And she got interested in that career pathway and found there was a dual credit program down the road from her school. So it wasn't at her school, it was a different school. But her school supported her and helped transport her to go do that dual credit program.
Mm.
And she graduated high school in 2023. And she just graduated with her 2-year degree in instrumentation a couple of weeks ago in December. And I was in the audience and I was so
Aw.
proud. Yes, I was so proud to go and watch her, get her degree. And yeah, now she is working full time with one of our local industry partners. And, she's just turned 20. She just turned 20
Oh
years old, like
gosh.
2 weeks ago. And she said, if it wouldn't have been for that opportunity for me to just to talk to those women, I did not know this career path existed or that I could pursue it. And she loves it. She loves what she does. And she's making a really, really good living now. And so that's like our first full circle success story. And so
Oh
she
man.
actually spoke at our fundraiser this past December, and she was a little like, timid because, public speaking is hard. But
It
I, I,
is.
I told her, I said, they need to see you. They need to see you, not just our supporters and our industry partners, but the girls coming behind you. And so you got to be visible. And so we're working on that, but she's doing amazing. And again, those little success stories is what keeps me going.
But I think you bring up a really good point. Whether you're a little bit farther in your career, like you and I, Stephanie, or whether you're just
Mhm.
starting, it's your responsibility to show up and be visible and be accessible, is what I'm going to call it,
Yeah.
right? That you're not some foreign thing that somebody just sees on LinkedIn. Like you really are accessible.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I was in Academy the other day and I just popped in there last minute to go look for something. And a girl, one of the sales associates, you know how they asked, "Can I help you find anything?" And you just kind of like,
Yep.
"Oh no, I'm fine. I'm just looking." And I just kind of did that, right? And she passed by me and she said, she said, "Women in industry." And I just looked at her. She goes, "I've met you before." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And so I was like, "So what are you doing?" And she went to one of my conferences and she said, "Well, I'm studying instrumentation." And I'm like, "You go, girl." So she's going to
That's
get her 2-year
awesome.
degree probably next year. I think she'll graduate next year, but she's working part-time at Academy. She's getting her
Right.
degree and then she's going to go out into the workforce. So yeah, seeing those, like just being out in public and somebody recognizing you, that was like my moment where I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah. I do want to say one thing. You mentioned your husband earlier. We've talked
Mhm.
about allyship. That was actually a couple episodes ago. He had HJ Jewis on, but your husband has been such an incredible support for you, right? In terms of being an ally, not only for you, but for the young girls, right?
I could not and would not be where I'm at without my husband. Like it is just, I mean, we've been married 16 years now. And I also tell girls because I think it's important for them to know too, this one's for the gals is not an I don't need a man initiative,
Yeah, he
right?
does not.
Independent
No.
woman, no, it's not that at all because I just want them to be prepared, if life doesn't turn out the way they think it will. Because again, I wasn't, right? Life didn't turn out the way I thought it would, and I wasn't prepared. But yes, my husband, again, because this just kind of like happened, and so he's just kind of like coming along and but he's been such a great support system and he is again industrial electrician by trade and so he runs our electrical workshops and he's
Mm,
teaching middle schoolers how to wire up and create these little projects and
that's awesome.
doing presentations and just being so supportive of me because it does take a lot of my time as well
Yep.
and yeah, he has definitely been just a huge support system and encourager and I just really can't imagine life without him.
Yeah, allyship looks like a lot of different things. That's why I wanted to bring it up. A little off topic,
Hmm.
but not. So I joked with you, speaking of all the things that he helps you do. I joked with you, I think when you and I were sharing notes, if you ever sleep, because I follow you on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I was like, I don't think Stephanie ever slows down. So, as people are thinking about the new year, it's a little bit of a topic pivot. What recommendations would you have for our listeners on how to balance multiple passions? Because I think more and more professionals are doing that. They're having maybe a more stable corporate job, I'll call it, and then they have one or multiple passions outside of that.
Grace. Give
Mm,
yourself grace. And also, my life right now looks different than it did 10 years ago, right?
mm,
My twin boys, they're 21, so they're kind of grown and gone. My daughter's 15 and helps me keep my life together, right? And so life looks a little bit different for me. I have more time, right? I have more,
mm,
excuse me. I have more time to invest in other areas, right? And I think as women, we
right.
are going to go through different seasons of life, right? We're going to go through those seasons where we are, shuffling kids back and forth to baseball and school activities and recitals and working, and whether we're trying to further our own education and being a wife and a mom and a mother and a student. And give yourself grace, right? It's going to
Mm,
look different at different seasons of your life. And that's what I tell people all the time when they do ask me, like, how do you do all the things that you do? I'm like, my life looks a little bit different right now, right?
yep.
And so, again, if my kids were smaller and things were different, I wouldn't be able to do half of the things that I do. But now that, my kids are a little bit older, I get to have that extra wiggle room to invest it back into the next generation and my passions, right? Into my passions and all of the different things that I like to do. And I also incorporate it with, you know, family activities, right? And so I'll be like, oh, family's going to spend some time together. We're going to be put stickers on hard hats this weekend.
Yeah. And on a complete side note, you have a beautiful granddaughter. I saw she recently had her birthday, I think, just a day or two ago. She's gorgeous.
Yes, 3 years old. I have two grandbabies now. My grandbaby girl's
Okay.
3, and then my grandson is 7 months old. But,
Okay.
even having my granddaughter, I'm like, if that isn't more fuel to my fire to make it easier for the next generation, I don't know what is, right? I want to make things, just a little bit easier, right? For my daughter, for my
Yep.
granddaughter, for my daughters-in-law. I'm again, everything that I learned along my way that I just didn't know. Now I want to go back and like
Mm.
I even went back to my own school, my junior high school to
Oh,
do a
that would be scary.
presentation. Yeah.
I live in my hometown now, so you've got that in my head about doing that.
Oh yeah, girl, I did. We're actually going to do a workshop there in a couple of weeks for their eighth grade girls, for all of their eighth grade girls. There's
Oh
47.
gosh.
There's 47. That's how small of a town we're talking, right? But I'm really excited to go back and like share, like, hey, girls, man, the sky's the limit, right? Explore careers, go talk. I really like to say we talk to girls about careers that not a lot of people talk to girls about,
Mm.
right? And
Yep.
so going back, and if you have the opportunity to just kind of go back to, don't forget where you came from, I guess, is kind of what,
Mm.
I try to do.
That's good advice for me because I literally do live in my hometown right now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to end with two questions that center around advice. So, one piece of advice I received several years ago from Stacy Cassio was rather than setting a resolution or resolutions for the year, setting an intention. And she often advised to set that in a word or a phrase versus saying, I'm going to lose 10
Mm.
pounds or whatever this year. Like, what's your intention, phrase, or word? Is there anything that's knocking on your heart this year for that word or phrase?
I think it's what I mentioned earlier. It's be visible,
Mm,
because again, I, while I, am the face of This One's for the Gals, I'm the founder and I'm out there and I'm on the stage and I'm giving the presentations. I don't think it until that girl asked me that question that I could not answer and just made me realize that it's super important for me to be visible. It really is. And I think I took that for granted a little bit, right? Just knowing how important it is. And
mm.
so that would probably be my best, just my little takeaway for the year is just be visible.
Be visible. I like it. All right. My final question I love to ask every guest. What one piece of advice or quote would you leave with our listeners as we wrap up today?
My absolute favorite quote, dreams don't work unless you do.
Ooh, dreams don't work unless you do. That is so very true.
Yes.
Oh my
I live
gosh,
by those
Stephanie.
words.
That's a lot. That's amazing. Well, where can folks find you? I'll put it in the show notes. You've sent it to me, but where can the folks find you if they're looking to connect or help support your organization?
So our website is www.thisonesforthegals.com. We're also all over social media. So you'll find us on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We're trying to be on TikTok, but good gosh, that is a full-time job. But I do say we've got to meet the kids where they're at, and where are
Oh,
they?
good
They're
point.
all over social
Point.
media. And so we do try to be as super active as we can on there, because really it's just information, right? It's information awareness. Like they could be scrolling through our posts and then link it to a website and go explore careers. I'm like, we're just giving them information. But yeah, we're all over the place.
I love it. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for being our guest. I just realized I did not give your last name. It's Stephanie Hajducek. That was my fault on the intro. That will all be in the show notes, Stephanie's bio, link to her website, all that good stuff. So if you missed it, I'll have it in the show notes. Well, Stephanie, this was like girl time for me. This was fantastic. It was sort of like being back at the conference and we're just on video, not at a table together. Thank you so much for being a support and inspiration for all the girls out there.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me share this great story. And I will see you in Chicago.
You will see me in Chicago. I will see you guys in February. Bye, everybody.
Bye.